When I was younger, I used to watch these beautifully animated movies with outlandish characters in bizarre worlds. One of my favourites was Laputa, a tale about a boy and a girl who defy a corrupt military organisation to discover the ancient floating castle of Laputa high up in the skies, preserved for centuries by a protective barrier of clouds and lightning in order to keep out intruders. Little did I know that this place was not just a childhood fantasy. There exists a valley whose nature remains unfettered by the pollution and corporate greed of men. Its vast landscape was shaped by a colossal lake tens of thousands of years ago, which gave way to an unparalleled biodiversity as forests grew tall and creeks meandered in their numbers through the safety of the wetlands. Today, some know it as the Centennial, a word that celebrates history and anniversary at its uttering. Where do you come from? Where do you wake up every day to go to work, to see your friends? What is there to see, to do? Now try to imagine somewhere completely different. Alien. That's where this story is set. In southwestern Montana lies the Centennial Valley, a place where man is a minority and wildlife has flourished for hundreds of years. And it's all thanks to a joint effort on the part of the few people who live here that transcends the modern political climate in favour of grassroots management and conservation.
Landscape level conservation, looking outside the boundaries of the public lands and looking for opportunities for conservation on private land and looking for ways to maybe help the private landowners with whatever their business is here in the valley.
During my artist in residency here, I set out to capture the reasoning behind the seemingly impossible success of this tightly knit community in maintaining the beautiful time capsule that is the Centennial by talking with some of its most engaged members about their experiences. Welcome to the Valley's very own pie auction. Pies baked by people in the Valley are sold here at lavish prices by a real-life cattle auctioneer who's helping to raise money for the Historical Society. This yearly gathering brings the whole community together as part of an event organised by the Society, which arranges guest speakers and silent auctions in order to celebrate the rich history of America's West and provide a time during which friends and family can unite under a roof of potluck dinners, barbecues, and of course, pies.
And we'll explain it to you right over here immediately after the auction.
It is now a really large event considering there are there's like 35 people living in this valley, but there were 250 people last Saturday that came to the event.
Because I originally came from Chicago and community's not a big thing out there. You kind of have your little cliques. And in Montana, I think people just like to stay close together and remain a part of one another and stay connected. And history is a really big thing, I think, out here. And it's a fun way for everyone to come and chat and kind of think about the old days. learn from one another, and who wouldn't want to come down here and come back and visit.
And the community is just not the Centennial Valley. The community is Beaverhead County, southwestern Montana, the United States, Croatia. We are all here. And we better start paying attention to that. How little it is or how big it is. And community is the only way you can do it.
But these kinds of meetings don't just happen by chance. It took a sustained effort of connection and communication over several years in order to glue different groups of people together, despite their differences in opinion on how the valley should be run.
My management philosophy over my career has seen where you have folks argue over how to do business, and then I've witnessed where people like to problem solve. I would call this problem solving. So a problem is we now have grizzly bears on a landscape that for 110 years, that mostly cattle ranchers were the only ones that came up into this country because there was plenty of grass. And so now that they may have to deal with grizzly bears, whether we manage it or argue about whether or not bears should be here at all, we find solutions to try to prevent conflict between grizzly bears and cattle. And some people have tried to relate that to what we might call an 80-20 situation. 20% of the time we may never agree. We can choose to disagree on that and get nowhere, or we can work on the 80% where we do agree, which is we don't want conflict. We don't talk about whether we want grizzly bears, we talk about whether we don't want conflict, and we work off of solving conflict. And that becomes satisfying to both sides of the argument about whether we should have grizzly bears.
No, I used to be angry, and I used to not, I used to think it was like my place. I guess I had a selfish attitude that this was my valley, you know.
Ranchers have always had the longest and most intimate relationship with the valley. So, when outside conservation groups such as the Wildlife Land Trust and the Nature Conservancy began to try to change their lifestyle with long-term environmental benefits in mind, it wasn't an easy adjustment for all.
But you're not going to stop people from coming. So that's when I kind of changed gears and thought, well, other than saying you're not welcome, say you're welcome, and then find out what it is that they're interested in doing or seeing or participating in or they don't want to be a part of. I'm not a professor, but to educate them. I mean, to educate them about the way of life, or to educate them why you're trailing your cows and so they can't drive 50 miles an hour on the dirt road. I mean, I think you always got to educate people and try and help them see why you're doing it, the reasoning behind what you're doing.
The Taft Nicholson Center is now a place where students and professors from the University of Utah can spend weeks taking environmentally themed art courses or biology labs.
And it's delightful to know that we've done something like that. And it's now bringing into focus art and science and poetry and all of this sort of thing that was not in my mind at the time at all. No.
While at first it was seen as a threat to the untouched balance of the ecosystem of ranches and the environment, it provided a much needed point of contact to the world of the youth. And in turn, when their summer classes end, they report back to their urban university in the hopes of spreading the enlightened management and conservation systems of the Centennial Valley.
To expose young people to the valley with the hope that maybe they'll take care of it is a wonderful thing.
I hope we are a model to other places. I mean, everywhere you go in life, you're going to meet people that have different points of view or different interests, but rather than fight, work together. I mean, try and overcome your differences or accept them. I mean, that's the other part of this is acceptance. If an individual wants something, say they want to see birds, then accept they're here to see the birds and do what you can to keep that habitat intact, whether it's different environmental beliefs or religious beliefs or philosophical beliefs. Just accept it. Don't fight with them, accept what they have to believe in.
I believe the word nuance of what humans are capable of doing can be used for a lot of good, but you have part of that nuance is in relationship building, probably maybe the most important part, because before you can modify people's behavior or cause change, you have to kind of persuade them or have them maybe let go of some of their fears of change. And all of that requires that they trust you, or they trust who they're dealing with. And so we like to say, don't move any faster than the speed of trust. And if you don't feel like you're trusted, don't go there.
It's now the day before I finish my artist in residency, and I don't know where to start. I mean, I've seen ranchers put aside their differences to protect predators. I've seen a society raise up to $1,000 just by selling pies. I've seen a plot of land that was looked down on and ignored flourish into this campus with students and researchers and artists, and that wasn't by the government's influence, that wasn't by environmental pressure, that was by community. People working together, collaborating, cooperating as part of a community. And if it can happen here, in this valley, in this castle in the sky, then it can happen anywhere. It's not just prime ministers, presidents who can make a change. It's when individuals come together and really, really hone in on what matters and break it down to the bare essentials. And that's how change happens in the world.